Good afternoon, everyone. We made it. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you for still coming and for being flexible. So we are going to make some adjustments to the program, given the fact that we are behind, but we are still going to do award presentations, and we are still going to have a keynote. Our only change is that President Whitfield and Provost Heavey will sadly no longer be able to join us. So we're going to miss out on their brief remarks, but they do wish they could have been here. But given everything that went down, we are going to move on without them. So we are also going to go out of order because some of our award recipients I know aren't going to be able to stay. So we are going to just start the day off by giving out the Professional Development Awards, which actually are a surprise, and the winners do not know that they are winning. So we're going to do that, and then we are going to honor our 2021 Administrative Faculty of the Year because we have not been in person together since that person won. So we're going to recognize them. So we are just going to get started, and you just continue eating. We're going to be very low key today, okay? Sound good? All right. So first up, I want to announce this year's recipients of the AFC Professional Development Awards. These following individuals will receive funding to be used for virtual or in-person professional development. I am not sure if everyone who's on this list is here, but if you are here and I read your name, please come up because I do have a certificate for you. So I'm just going to read all the names. Just start walking up. Hold your applause for the end. The recipients are King Min Shi, Raphael Oganesian, Christina Schmid, Christine Draper, Heather Richardson, Dana Mingwagi, Jessica Page, and Deborah Gorov. Give them all a round of applause. There you go. Congrats. All right, let's give them all one more round of applause. So the winners and those who couldn't be with us today, you'll be notified via email on how to access your awarded funds, so more to come on that. I also, like I said, want to recognize our 2021 Administrative Faculty of the Year recipient, Dr. Sal Biazzo. And as Dr. Biazzo comes up, I'm going to read your bio and a little bit of your nomination, okay? So bear with me. Come on up. Dr. Biazzo embodies the spirit of this coveted award by his exemplary, innovative, and sustained level of service and dedication to our UNLV and Las Vegas communities. Dr. Biazzo is an authentic caregiver. As a senior staff physician of the Student Health Center and the FAST Clinic, he provides exceptional care to students and the entire UNLV community. As any patient of Dr. Biazzo's realizes immediately, he genuinely cares and invests time to listen and create a holistic framework for each person's medical journey. Dr. Biazzo is well known on campus for his genuine compassion and thoughtfulness, and we are the beneficiaries of his remarkable approach to providing real care for our wellness and health. Let's give Dr. Biazzo one more round of applause. There you go. Congrats. Awesome. Now, see, I have to go backwards in my script because we're going out of order. Okay. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, I'm sure, besides my sort of speech, where I want to introduce our keynote today. Veronica will be joining us virtually. So obviously we are all here in person, but we are live streaming this on YouTube, and we do have at least as many attendees, if not more, watching virtually. Veronica Seymour, she joined the nonprofit world 13 years ago through AmeriCorps Volunteers in Service to America program in Houston, Texas, with the College for All Texas Foundation. For 6 years, Veronica served Southern Nevada in various capacities by holding positions with the Girl Scouts of Southern Nevada, Opportunity Village, Easter Seals Nevada, which is now Capability Health and Human Services, and the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation. She ventured into the world of fundraising, consulting, and contract work in 2019. Veronica holds a Bachelor of Arts in Victim Services from Sam Houston State University and receives her certificate for nonprofit management at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. She is a certified fundraising executive, and she completed her Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Workplace Certificate through the University of South Florida. Veronica was raised in a military family. Service to others has been instilled in Veronica. She currently serves on the Sigma 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 Foundation Board of Directors. Veronica is a member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals and currently serves the West Florida chapter as the National Philanthropy Day co-chair. Veronica also serves on the Junior League of Pensacola's board as the VP of Fund Development. In what's left of Veronica's spare time, she enjoys traveling, reading, and staying active. Today, Veronica is going to be talking to us about advancing your strengths, unlocking your leadership potential as a professional. She's going to provide us with tips and hacks for handling burnout, working through conflict, and breaking down the myths and misnomers of resiliency. There is going to be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end of the presentation. So your options in the room are to either write your question on the white pieces of paper on your table and hold them up at the end. You will know when we get to there. So when Veronica's done talking at the end, hold up your paper. One of our moderators will come grab it for you and I will read it. Or if you're feeling brave, you can make a line here at the microphone on the floor and ask your question. And if you are watching us on YouTube, you can put your questions in the YouTube chat, and we have someone moderating that, and they will get those to me so that I can read them. Everyone good? All right, let's give a warm welcome to Veronica.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Savannah. I really appreciate you joining me in my home office in Pensacola, Florida, very close to Southern Alabama. Just in any work at home environment, I'm just going to warn you, I do have a dog, so there might be barking in the background, but I've taken her out of the room. So we'll see how this goes. But thank you so much for having me. Today, as we talk about advancing your strengths and talking about burnout and conflict and resiliency, I want to start with some ground rules of what I'm looking at. These are all going to be tools for you to accept or not to accept. It's going to be challenge by choice today. While I hope that you will participate, I just want to remind everyone that we are all individuals and we all handle information and stress and all those things that go along with it differently. So we're going to talk a little bit about giving grace. So I do have some help. So I will be saying next slide so we can advance to the next slide here. Over the last 23 months, we have had quite a bit of things happen in our country. We've had the global pandemic. We have had all sorts of opportunities to try new things, but we've also had a grief pandemic of things that are happening when we find our disparities in healthcare, in socioeconomics, in social injustices. And we've found ourselves with blurred boundaries between our work and personal lives. But next slide. Through it all, we have survived every day that we have been through. You have made it this far, and I want you to congratulate yourself because you are here. So I'm going to be referencing Liz and Molly photos throughout this presentation. If you are on Instagram, I suggest you give them a follow. They really hit home those big feelings that we're going to be talking about today. So while we have had quite a bit of things happen over the last 23 months, let's talk about the things that we have learned over those 23 months that have been good for you. What are you grateful for? I know for myself personally, I am grateful for not having to have the commute for 2-hour drives on some of my jobs. So I found an opportunity to use that time for either hobbies or having an opportunity to take up running. I'm not good at it, but I tried. So I want you to take the next 2 minutes and you can talk to your friends at the table, and we're going to see what we need to do about what you're grateful for and just share our experiences over the last 23 months. So you'll have 2 minutes to talk. Tell us what you're grateful for. If you are online and you are joining us, it's okay. You can drop it in the chat as well. Would love to know what you are grateful for that you have learned over a very trying time. I did set a timer for the 2 minutes, so I will just be quiet and just be right here. Okay, we are back. I hope you had some great conversations. I also can't wait to go back and read everybody's comments. So I want you to think of those moments that you were grateful for as we talk about these topics, because they are a little bit heavier, but I also want to make sure that we are using it in a way where we are talking about positive influences when we talk about burnout, resiliency, and conflict. So as you can see, I use this as a little Venn diagram because I was trying to really think about how I could tie this all up in an hour, because these are a lot of topics that could take everything and be 3 individual hour-long sessions. But when to it, it really came down to, next slide, stress. To me, when I think about everything that has happened over the last 2 years, it was like discovering a new stressor every day before I had solved the last one. Wasn't quite sure what we were going to do as we were moving from online learning to in-person learning and what's going on in our community. And so there's a lot of different things that can happen when we talk about stress, but there are 2 versions of stress that we are going to discuss today. So next slide, we're going to talk about the first one. It's called good stress or good pressure. It's called eustress. And eustress was discovered and coined by a professor of cognitive science at UC Irvine. Her name is Sarah C. Mednick, and she is a PhD professor. Basically, we want to make sure that we are in these stressful experiences because it can help us build confidence. It shows that you can handle these challenges. I'm sure, as Savannah has talked to you about today, she had a lot of challenges, but she rose to the occasion, and we're here today, and we're so thankful for her to help get this taken care of. But there's also some of that bad stress. So next slide, we'll talk about that. So sometimes you might be walking around looking like this. This photo is from a New York Times article when we were first in the early pandemic about what does burnout and resiliency look like. So some days you might be the little smoke cloud going to work. Other days you might be fully engulfed and say, I need to stop, drop, and roll. How do I take care of myself? So we're going to do a little quiz. Next slide. This little quiz is just going to be to see where you are. There's going to be a couple clicks here, so bear with me. You just got another project that needs to be done ASAP. Do you, 1, send a snarky email complaining about your workload? Or 2, do you ignore it and go on to organize maybe your spice drawer or your desk drawer? Or 3, do you stare out the window for 20 minutes and wonder how you're ever going to get this all done? So if you are online, you can drop 1, 2, and 3 in the chat. If you are in person, you can just show fingers 1, 2, or 3. What are you feeling when you have to hear that you're taking on another project? Your options really are, if you give it another click, you'll see the snarky email is that you're actually being reactive, which can make you more stressed because now you're ready to fight. You are ready to be ready for what the next person's going to say. You're kind of playing out the whole scenario in your head and you're ready to go. The next option, if you're choosing to ignore, is that you're looking to flee because you're not quite sure where to start. So we need to figure out how to take those next steps. And if you're in the freezing mode, we just need to teach your body how to regulate some of those hormones so we can kind of jumpstart you to the next part. Next slide. So let's talk about stress in 2 different ways. Stress can be physical or it can be emotional. Now, we also know that stress can affect people in different ways and how they choose to react to it. So when I think of stress, I think of it leading to burnout. So burnout is sometimes that ways that we can think about this are 2 ways. Marcus Buckingham is someone who has created different leadership programs. And so he says burnout happens the same way bankruptcy does, gradually and then suddenly. I like to think of it as the car solution. We know we need to take a break, or you need to fill up gas, or you kind of push your way all the way to see how long you can get to E before you need to get to the gas station. I am someone where once I hit the middle part of the gas tank, I said, oh, I definitely need to go. Whereas my husband was like, let's see how far E can go. And then if we need to push the car to the gas station, we will. That stresses me out. So you might be figuring out where you are on this totem pole, but at the end of the day, some of these thoughts might be going through your head. Next slide. Burnout feels like you are working nonstop, and then you're panicking because you have more work. And then you're going to say you're going to take a break, but all you're doing during your break is panicking about the work you have left. Sometimes this also feels like when you're taking vacation and you also know that you have work left. So when you are, say, going to the beach to relocate for vacation, but you bring your laptop to work at the beach, all you're doing is telecommuting instead of taking a break. We really need to work through how do we work out of burnout. We need to take breaks for ourselves. One of the things that author Brene Brown, next slide, wrote in her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, is it takes courage to say yes to rest and play in a culture where exhaustion is seen as a status symbol. I am sure you have seen all over social media, work hard, play hard, and that we want to make sure that we are avoiding some of that because being balanced is also very nice. So let's talk about some of those physical aspects to avoid stress. How are you going to make sure that you are filling up your gas tank to make sure that you are okay? So I put a little robot in this photo because you are a little soundboard. You need to make sure you are sleeping, eating, and moving to be working most effectively. So let's talk about sleeping first. Next slide. The National Sleep Foundation says that you should be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. They also say you shouldn't have electronics before bed, before 30 minutes. You should be reading. I know I definitely don't follow that rule. I am definitely someone who will TikTok until the little man pops up that says, wait, you've been scrolling for too long. But I'm also someone that says, oh, well, now it's 11:45. I'll just get on Twitter and wait so I can play the next Wordle of the day. I will eventually get my 7 hours of sleep, but it will not be consistent. So you might be a caretaker or a caregiver, so your schedule for sleep might be a little bit different. We just need to make sure that you are finding whatever works for you so that you are most alert during that day. Next slide. Let's talk about eating. We're going to use the example of you are a chimney. So if you are starting a fire at the beginning of the morning, that'll be your breakfast. You're getting roaring ready to go for the rest of the day. One of the things that they suggest is eating smaller meals and making them more frequently because just like a fire, you wouldn't want the fire to go all the way out, have to start over to keep going and rebuild one. So instead, you want to just keep feeding that fire kindling to keep the fire going for the full day. I also like to think of this, if you are a fantasy sci-fi person, as the Hobbit meal plan. You're going to start with breakfast, you're going to have 11sies, you're going to have maybe second breakfast, lunch, a snack, dinner, and then of course my favorite meal, dessert. Whatever this looks like to you, you can plan this out. I've had coworkers that actively had to set alarms to make sure that they were eating, because I know I was someone who said, I will do this after this next email. But the emails keep coming. And so then I would find myself at 3 o'clock not having had lunch. Whatever plan works for you, we can figure out the best way, but make sure that you are fueling your body. Next slide. One of the other suggestions that is always given is that you should continuously move. Now, I am someone that doesn't always enjoy working out, but I have learned that if I put my money down first, I don't want to be separated from my money and it go to waste. So I have paid for classes, and so then I will therefore go. I took up kickboxing when I was in Las Vegas, and I found that if I went to classes in the morning, my day felt so much better. And if I didn't miss it, I might have been a little irksome in some meetings, but going at the end of the day, it was nice to punch it out. I'm actively training for a running race right now. I complain about it the entire time before I go, but I feel so much better at the end. If active exercise might not be for you, let's take some smaller steps. If you have a smartwatch, you can have that nice little alarm that tells you to breathe. I turn that off on mine, but you might have the one that says stand up. Stand up for 10 minutes at the end of the hour, walk around, get your drink, maybe go have a healthy snack, get going. The idea of keep moving is making sure that your body isn't stagnant. And during the pandemic, we've been given tech neck, where we hunch over our computers and we're so concerned that we're starting to need to change what our body is doing. So sit up and stretch a little bit and figure out what that is for you. Next slide. Now, everybody might be looking at self-care a little bit differently as well. Self-care is really just making you feel what is most natural in your state. Are you someone that is consuming a lot of energy when it's time to take care of yourself? You might also be an extrovert or an introvert. An extrovert might say self-care looks like gathering all of your friends and going out for happy hour and appetizers. Someone else might say, as an introvert, my self-care is going to the bookstore, buying a new book, and then turning on a meditation app. Whatever this is, we want to make sure that you feel at peace. And so next slide. This looks like you're accomplishing hard work every day, but we also want to make sure that you can exercise, eat, sleep, and then you enjoy your time off. So one of the things that I know I struggle with is I am someone that will always say yes. Yes, I will take on this extra project. Yes, I want to be part of this committee. Yes, I want to go volunteer with you, even though I know that requires me not sleeping the next day. So whatever that is, I want to challenge you by next slide. What have you said no to today? Now, yes, there is no is a complete sentence phrase, but I don't suggest you say that to your boss, but maybe say something to your other commitments outside of the office. What are something that you don't necessarily have to take care of today? You can rest and take care of yourself. Next slide. So this one is going to be another activity, challenge by choice. You can drop it in the comments or you can have a group discussion. We'll do this one for about 5 minutes, but I want you to talk about what keeps your tank full. What makes you avoid feeling drained? What is it that you do that makes you feel recharged? So go ahead and share. I will mute myself again and have a great conversation. All right, I hope everyone has enjoyed their conversation. As we join back together again, we're going to talk about our last piece, which is going to be about our work life. So next slide. There are a few different suggestions that are out in the community about what we should be doing to avoid stress, but it really comes down to these questions. And the way that we should use this is I want you to think of a date where you can pick today, it could be tomorrow, sometime this week, but then in 6 months, you have this conversation again with yourself before you bring in other people. Do I feel safe? Do I feel appreciated? Do I feel supported? These questions might be long answers. It doesn't necessarily have to be a yes or no. But one of the things that contributes to burnout is conversations around workload, around your around the work as well as the organization. You might not have all of this done through just your work, but it could also be things that you do outside of your work. If you're committed in your faith through service, or if you are committed to different community events, you might be finding some of these expectations met outside of your work environment, which is great. Maybe your team allows you to go and volunteer and have that extra time if it's a little off course from what other groups might do. At the end of the day, have this conversation with yourself. If you find yourself that you're not being able to answer these questions, how can we have a conversation to bring in others to make sure that we are feeling those opportunities? And when we talked earlier about you have stress management through fight, flee, or freeze, there is actually a fourth option, and it's called flock. What is your community? We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to talk to a trusted family member or a friend, or maybe you have a therapist that you seek, or maybe you have a faith leader that you talk to. Whatever it is, you want to have these conversations. Now, knowing that, next slide, we know that these conversations can also be emotional. I was very much an emotional child, and sometimes I still am. So when we talk about emotions, there's a lot of different things that go into it, but we're going to talk a lot about conflict. Next slide. So in conflict, there are two variations. There's going to be conflict with others or conflict with ourselves. So let's just start with conflict with ourselves. For me, I know I am someone that can be operating today and be just fine, and then all of a sudden think of something I said in 2008 and just blanch and grimace about that conversation. But guess what? I can't control that, but I can control the future. So I know not to avoid, not to do that again and to avoid it. One of the things that we also need to realize is, next slide, we need to be kind to ourselves. When I do something well, I'm like, oh, that was pretty good. But I also know that maybe if I replied all to an email, I am this person that is face planted on the floor going, oh no, 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 no. But if that happened to one of my colleagues or to a friend, I would have said that same thing. It's okay. You'll be fine. We need to work on our own talk to ourselves. If you have negative talk to you in your head, or how you talk about yourself in a self-deprecating manner, you also need to learn how to have those moments to say, you're doing a good job. So you can turn to your partner right now or in chat. If you see someone's name that you recognize, give them a shout out and say, you're doing a good job. You can turn to your neighbors now and do it right now. Perfect. Okay, let's talk about saying something. I like to call these feeling bursts. So I put this little tea kettle on here because I was someone that wouldn't say something. I would hold all of those emotions in, and then I would wait for my boiling over moment, and then I would just burst. This little feeling burst would probably be word vomit all over one of my friends, unfortunately, and they would just have to go, okay, great. I had to learn how to control that, so that way I could be able to have these conversations so I can express myself in a way where I wasn't getting so worked up, finding myself in conflict, and then eventually leading to burnout. So how do we do this? We need to learn to ask questions, because having these direct conversations allows us to avoid assumptions, because when we have assumptions, that doesn't end well for either party. One of the things I've learned to say is, I feel this way about this thing and I need this taken care of. So can you walk me through it? Maybe it's a work conversation around goals. Something new came up like that additional project. So is the goal to put this the priority and then change the priorities of our other projects? Or are these now all priorities because something's going to have to give? We only have so many hours in a day and want to make sure that we get these things done. So what I'm understanding from this instruction is we're going to stop working on our old projects. We're working on the new projects. And then once that project's completed, we'll be able to move on. Whatever those conversations need to be, they're direct, but they are not overly emotional. We need to be able to express ourselves in a way that says, I just want understanding because you and I have the same goal. We might just be approaching it different. So what does that look like? Next slide. I don't know about you, but I was a big fan of Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers' mother always said, look for the helpers. And so one of those conversations is who's in your community, right? When we get to talk about our feelings, we get to then feel less overwhelmed and less upset and less scary. The people we trust with that important talk can help us know we are not alone. One of the things I had to learn to say is I'm going to preface this conversation saying, I am not looking for a solution. I am here to vent. I just want you to nod your head and agree with me. Okay, I know what I am supposed to do then in this conversation. Now, if you want solutions, we can come back to that and we'll get to that later. Next slide. One of the things that once we have those tough conversations is that we're building trust. And that is hugely important because when we carry that trust, we're able to accomplish so much more. Mitch Albom's an author. He did Tuesdays with Maury and a few other books. But one of the books I had just read was called Finding Chica. And he said, what we carry defines who we are. The effort we make is our legacy. And that really made me think about the conversations that we've had around the last 23 months. We had a lot of unprecedented times. Do we want to go back to precedented times? It's the new normal. There's a lot of phrases that came around, bouncing back. Now, I don't necessarily think we need to always bounce back because the word is maybe don't bounce backwards. We don't need to go to a place where things aren't working. We want to bounce forward. So what does that look like? If we're in a stressful situation, we need to figure it out. We've learned a lot about ourselves, about technology, about the way people work. So we know how to not get knocked down next time and that we can work forward. We need to be at peace that we are, again, human and we all have our imperfections and we are all learning. So we're going to talk about resiliency and what does that look like? So let's start with what we know. Resiliency is a term that was first formed really in the 1970s and 80s, and we used it as a way to say that certain children living in adverse environments and that it was a quality that you're born with, which is a fixed mindset, and that's not necessarily true. Next slide. Resiliency is a growth mindset. We are saying that individuals are believing in their talents that can be developed and worked. We can have a good strategy and that we can have a great input from others. We are actively putting energy into being better. The Harvard Business Review even says that employees that are far more empowered and committed to their work when they have a growth mindset and that it's embraced by the entire team. We need to view a challenge as a new opportunity. We need to see failure as a temporary moment and allows us to grow. Criticism is a chance to do better, and that a problem is a new opportunity to succeed. We know that solutions can be difficult and that each day looks a little bit different. I know that there have been a lot of days over the last 2 years where something from my personal life might have affected my work, but we all have to give ourselves that grace because that's how we learn to be resilient. We need to take the good and the bad and move forward. Next slide. I put these guys up here because there are definitely days I feel one of these characters a little bit more. Mr. Anger was somebody that I used to feel when I would have projects that didn't go the right way, but I needed to be a way to express myself in a positive way. If you have young children, you might hear that when you feel yourself ready to roar, take a breath and count to 4. One of the things that I needed to do during the pandemic is count to 4 quite often, but we need to give ourselves an opportunity to feel these emotions so we don't boil over, so we don't seek conflict right away. Because we have an opportunity to tell about our emotions, we're actually having an opportunity to connect because someone might be feeling that exact same way. We're able to cope and develop our resiliency a little bit more. On our next slide, I actually have something like this on my fridge. It says, you can't control other people. You can't control what they say, what they think, or what they do. People have the right to think and say whatever they want, but you have the right to not take it to heart and to not react. We don't know what their day is looking like. We don't know what is happening in their lens. And we just happen to be on the receiving end of that. Now, you might be taken aback and scoff a little bit and say, oh, no, they didn't. But at the same time, we need to have a chance to say, deep breaths, you count to 4. We'll see which little emotion we are in a little bit. Have that conversation. So one of the things that we've learned is that resilient people, because they are emotional, will be able to seek out help. We want to show that this is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength. I have worked with leaders that said, I have developed a team that is stronger than me because they have their own areas of expertise. When people are able to learn to ask for help, we are more resilient. Research actually shows that when we are asking for help, we are showing that we are competent because we know our limits and that we are trustworthy to have these opportunities presented. If you follow the speaker, Simon Sinek, he says, we must admit when we don't know, and we must ask for those around us to give us help because someone will offer that help. Failure is something we can do alone, but we don't have to. Success will always take a group. So we need to think about who is your community, who is in your group, who is in your team, because when you figure out who is in your team, they will be a sounding board for you to give you the rocket fuel for resiliency. So next slide. We're going to take a moment, and you can even tell this next part is going to be a little bit challenging. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and what you're going to do is if you are at home, you can send an email, you can call, you can send a text. If you're in person, same thing. I want you to think about your community. Who is someone that has been there for you, who has been able to help you work through that conflict, to help you be resilient, who has been able to tell you, you were stressed, please stop. We need to talk about you taking care of yourself. Take that time, give them a message. You can start the message and say, I am in a presentation and this lady is making me reach out to you, but I want you to know, and then finish that message. We need to be able to be kind to others, and that starts by letting folks know that their support of you is important. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, call, text, whatever you want to do, and just reach out and say thank you to that person and what that means for them to be a part of your community. Best of luck. Okay, I hope you didn't get a message that says, new phone, who's this? Who are you okay? But I hope that it was a nice message and you got one back in return. So To close us out for the day, we're going to talk a little bit about leadership. Leadership for me is you can lead from any seat. You don't necessarily need a title to be a leader. My definition of leadership is that you are putting the needs of others before your own. It's not about being in charge because that's a responsibility. Leadership is taking care of those that are in your charge. Next slide. For me, leadership is knowing that you are your best advocate. You are the subject matter expert of your role. You know what your limitations are. You are human. They don't expect you to be able to be available at all times of every day. So we need to make sure that we are practicing leadership by saying no and taking care of ourselves and giving ourselves grace as well. So we've talked a little bit about wellness, that we are sleeping, eating, we're moving. You have self-care. We've talked about connections, connecting with your community and texting them and reaching out. We've talked about healthy thinking, no more negative self-talk, making sure that we are able to have conversations. And we've talked about seeking help. But in seeking help, I want to expand on this a little bit more. So next slide. I know that I am not a mental health professional. I want to be very clear that I am not someone who has studied that. So we all know that we need help at times. So I want to give this recommendation to you. We all know that we need somebody. We know that there might be others that need to talk to somebody as well. And as leaders, we need to be aware of those connections and that you might be able to have an offering of extra support. So you'll be getting a slide deck of all of these slides, but feel free to take a picture of this. Know that the crisis text line is available to you for 24/7 and maybe something in your back pocket should you ever come across someone who also needs that type of support. We're going to work towards our last activity today, and I'm going to end with the phrase from President Eisenhower. In preparing for battle, I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. I grew up as a military kid. I thought I got away from it, but I married back right into it. But at the end of the day, military life has taught me is that planning is essential, but plans are meaningless. So we are offering the tools for you to move forward. We know that we're all individuals and that we all handle information differently and that there are many roads to Rome. So, as we're going to call it, tiny habits. This is from BJ Fogg, who's a Stanford University behavior scientist. He says that we need to start small. You need to back up whatever that is for what you're trying to change and make it so small that it is still going to be a part of your day and it will fit naturally into the routine, but it's no excuse. We have to try it. And so it doesn't matter when we start. It doesn't matter where we start. We just have to start. So I call this 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 is simply you're going to pick one goal. You're going to find 2 supports. Think of this as your accountability buddy. Maybe it's someone you're sitting with. Maybe it's someone at home. Maybe it's your direct manager, and that's a conversation you can have during your check-ins. Whatever these people are, you need to define them. And we write these out because we want to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable. You're going to give yourself 3 check-ins. They say 21 days to form a habit. So you can do a check-in at the end of week 1, end of week 2, end of week 3. Very simple. Now, if you're someone that needs a reward, we can figure that out too. So end of week 1, let's say we're going to Starbucks in the Union. And end of week 2, you're going to take yourself out to lunch. I like Chipotle. Let's go across the street. On number 3, you are going to figure out whatever that thing is that you're working towards. You did it all 21 days. Now, this is your own budget, so you can figure out what that is, but give yourself an opportunity to have that reward. So you wouldn't go to the gym and then immediately try to bench press 150 pounds. If you're me, you're going to go pick up the 2-pound weights and feel like you're a rock star because you're kicking butt. So what are you going to do to work on your one goal? Who are the people that are going to be part of your support team? And when do you want them to check in with you? We're going to give you 3 minutes to do that, and then we will move on and we will take questions after that. So feel free over the next 3 minutes to write those down. Talk with your colleagues to see if maybe they have some goals or ideas as well. I hope you have had an opportunity to write those goals down. If it's going to take you a little bit longer to work through that, that's totally okay. It's something you can come back to and reset whenever you want. The next slide is just my contact information. I'm happy to reach out and connect with you all individually, but I know we have a question and answer period, so I'll turn it over to y'all.
Round of applause. All right, so as a reminder, you can make a line at the microphone down here. Renee and Kelsey are standing up, so if you wanted to write a question on a piece of paper and give it to Renee or Kelsey, I can read it from up here. And if you are watching on YouTube, you can put your questions in the chat, and then I will read them. So does anyone have any questions? But I will ask this first one while you all are thinking. Veronica, you talked about sharing or making habits. If you're comfortable, can you share one habit that you've changed or, done this year over the past 2 years, or how the pandemic and resiliency has affected you personally? If you'd like to share something from your own personal life.
Sure. So as I said earlier, I married into the military again. I left Las Vegas to move to rural Oregon. Beautiful country, but so different. So many things not available to me anymore. No random trips to Target. But one of the things that I really challenged myself is during the pandemic is find ways to support my local community. And so I ended up working in a way to do home delivery to families for lunches and food that may not have those resources. And so by being able to find connection in a place where I didn't know a lot of people was super helpful. I also, because I wasn't traveling to work anymore, I had an hour back of my day. And so I decided I am not a runner, but I am going to try. So I just started with, let's run and see how far I could get. The first day it was to the end of the driveway because I was out of breath. But as I learned to kind of grow, I was actually able to then eventually sign up for virtual runs, and then I could put medals on the wall. You can see some of them, this way, right here. Most of those are my husband's because he's a marathoner. So I will claim 3 of those. Those are mine.
Question. There's some supervisors in the room. So if there are supervisors who supervise a staff team, a full-time staff team, do you have some tips of how to recognize if some of their staff are, having burnout or seem tired, from a work and a staff team perspective?
Sure. So one of the great articles that I like to read is Signing Up for Fast Company. And there's been a lot of studies over the pandemic of what work from home or returning to work looks like. And so the idea is that we provide ourselves 15 minutes every week to check in with our team and it not be about work. By being able to just talk about life and say oh my gosh, we had all these things happen and we need to have these conversations because I know it affects me emotionally in my job. Being able to provide that space and know that you're a safe space to have that conversation is fine. It's really hard to compartmentalize our life, especially when we are potentially only working through Zoom, or if we do have that opportunity to connect in person, we want to have a place where we're being authentic. And if you are saying and turning part of that self off and saying that you don't feel those things throughout the day, that's not being honest for you and it's not being honest for the workload. So having those conversations, and it could be very surface level, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but the check-in of what did you do this weekend? What are you doing to take care of yourself? Have you read any good books? Whatever it is, we want to just make sure that we start having a more conversational time. That way we can build ourselves to have better relationships moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Veronica. Last call, y'all. I know we're up against our original time. Look at us catching up to our original event time. You're welcome. But this is the last call for any last questions. All right, awesome. Let's give Veronica one more round of applause. Thank you so much, Veronica, for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. I just wanted to close out with just a couple of announcements about the Administrative Faculty Committee, do a little bit of a plug, and then do some very needed thank yous. So the Administrative Faculty Committee, or AFC's vision is to create a culture of inclusiveness and growth by fostering meaningful collaborations and opportunities for administrative faculty to participate in exactly what you're doing right now, like being together and also professional development. So right now, we meet virtually via WebEx on the second Tuesday of every month at 10:30 a.m. Our meetings are public and open to anyone. So if you're ever interested in coming to one of our meetings, or you're interested in joining the Administrative Faculty Committee when we have open seats, which, spoiler alert, we're going to have some open seats here coming up. You can email me directly at savannahbalterra.balterra@unlv.edu, or the AFC email, which is afc@unlv.edu. We would love to have you. And we just hope that you'll consider getting involved with us either in the main committee or in our mini subcommittees. So I just want to thank a few people for making this event possible, especially given our challenges today, and I appreciate all of you for being flexible and for still coming today. So from the AFC, I wanted to thank Ashley Stone, Kathy Schreiber, Kelsey Kaplan, Dina Leland for being here to help us in person. I wanted to thank David Knowles from Campus Recreation. He creates our logos and graphic design, so give David a round of applause. I wanted to thank Deborah Gorov. She was my event coordinator before she left me and went over to the law school. And then Shayna Kinzel from Student Union and Event Services. Give them a round of applause. And then none of what you're seeing on the screen virtually or in this room would not happen without Kirsten Dimmick from Student Union Event Services and his technical services team. So the biggest round of applause goes there. Thank you again for your flexibility, for your patience, for your attendance, and I hope you all enjoyed today and have a great rest of your day.